So what do you want to talk about first? I think we should talk about the Edmonton Oilers versus
Western
the Colorado Avalanche.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
Give me your thoughts on the Western Conference Final.
Well, I think the question we have to ask is, was the Western Conference Final a disappointment? Because I mean, like I was sitting here thinking, or not sitting here, but last night I was thinking,
what were you doing at my house last night?
No, we just had Speck and Adrian Dater on last week. Last week.
Yeah.
Like I was thinking, that wasn't just he's flying around your head right now. That wasn't just last week, was it? And I was like, yeah. We just had those guys on 7 days ago talking about how great and competitive this series was going to be. You know? Like, and I can't believe it. Like Daryl Sutter talked about it, playing Colorado being a waste of 8 days.
He was wrong. 7.
He was wrong. For Nashville, it was 7. For Edmonton, it was 7.
Yeah. Yeah.
So in that respect, huge disappointment. Huge disappointment.
The thing is that every year, we have to come up with things to write and things to say.
Right.
And there's got to be some sort of a media narrative. And, all due respect to the Montreal Canadiens beating the Toronto Maple Leafs last year, anybody who was trying to go for the angle that Montreal was going to do the upset, they were just looking for a new angle to write.
Right.
Every year, you hear things like the Stars cancel each other out, and then it's going to be, a battle of the bottom 6 when the stars on each team are diametrically opposed. Right. The stars are, Connor McDavid versus some
Ryan O'Reilly or whatever.
Right.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
So, every year you hear these narratives and to a certain extent, they feel a little bit fabricated. This year, the narratives all wrote themselves.
Yeah,
they were so perfect.
Yeah,
I couldn't have written a better playoffs.
Yeah, there was nothing forced about it. Nothing I mean, this one was, we were all like, this is going to be must viewing. And it was. The games were good. The games were good.
Some were.
Well, yeah, 2 and 3 weren't particularly good, but 1 and 4.
Oh, you're talking about this
excellent.
series specifically?
Yeah.
I'm talking about the whole playoffs at this point.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Like, if you were to have created a playoffs in a lab, you saw on the arm of the Battle of Alberta and the leg of the Battle of Florida, and you flick the switch and you give it life. 2022 must have just been the Mob with fire, because it just so what have been the most hyped series? Okay, well, the Battle of Alberta was one, right,
and it was disappointing in that we didn't get more of it.
But the games themselves, even
some game 1 was crazy. Game 5 was excellent.
Game 1 was crazy because of bad goaltending.
Right. Okay. Oh, that's my phone. I'm sorry. It's buzzing. Like that fly.
Yes.
So the Battle of Alberta was disappointing. The Battle of Florida was disappointing.
Yeah.
What were the other really hyped series?
With the last one. The one that we're talking about right now, Edmonton versus Colorado.
Yeah, the Western Conference Final. Disappointing in as much as it was a sweep. And it wasn't as competitive as we would have liked.
Yeah.
However, I will argue this. The series was disappointing, but the superstars on both teams, they did their part. They did their part. They came to play.
Yeah.
They were excellent. They drove play. They were difference makers.
Yep.
They were exciting.
Yep.
They went hammer and tong against one another. So to me, in that respect, it was not disappointing. I mean, Leon Draisaitl's performance in Game 4, I mean, that's an Oilers win away from being one of those ones that you talk about for 20 years.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like Draisaitl playing basically on one leg, gets 4 primary assists, is all over the ice. You see him, basically he can't even get off the ice half the time when he's going back to the bench.
Yeah.
And then he sits there for 2 minutes and he comes back out and he's great again,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what more Connor McDavid could have done. I don't know. I what more could he have done to put that team on his back and carry it? I think he was excellent. Cale Makar was otherworldly.
Yeah.
He was otherworldly.
Yeah.
I mean, that was one of the best defenseman performances we've seen in a generation. I mean, people are now like Kelly Rudy, who talked about how somebody texted him and said that Cale Makar's the best defenseman since Bobby Orr. I mean, that is the kind of thing that this guy is showing us right now.
I mean, he's wrong, but somebody's saying it.
Yeah. I would quibble with that.
Yes.
A little bit. But you know, I mean, and Nathan McKinnon was excellent. Like it was, you know, they all did their part.
Yeah.
They brought it. Hey, they you know, they didn't shortchange anybody. These guys did not shortchange anybody. Yeah. But what happened was, you know, I mean, Mikko Rantanen got, you know, started to come alive, and, you know, you had Nikushkin making some plays. You had, and it was that. It was exactly that.
Yeah.
It was that. It was the Stars canceled each other out, and it was depth and goaltending. You know, that ended up deciding. No, but I think
he's a star, but I'm saying that like coming from the back end.
Right. So what I'm saying though is that Draisaitl, McDavid, Makar, and McKinnon kind of canceled each other out, and then it did come down. To, you know, I mean, you know, so you've got Hyman and Rantanen. Okay, so that cancels out too, and then you go down a little further, and the further you go down, you know, the Darren Helms, the JT Comfers, those guys for Colorado stepped it up. Yeah. Whereas the Edmonton guys, you know, were, you know, Jesse Puljujärvi was invisible at times during that series.
I wouldn't say invisible.
Yeah.
Because on the bench, he's always got a goofy look on his face. So that's when I definitely notice him the most.
And goaltending, I think, you know, I mean, Mike Smith was very good for parts of the series, and he was dreadful for half the series, I would say.
So, yeah, I mean, I disagree with you a little bit there. I think that Mike Smith had one bad game.
Game one?
Yes.
The 8-6 game?
Yeah. And one not great game.
Right.
But, like, you know, like all things being equal, like, you know, you're not going to get an otherworldly goaltending performance every single night.
But you need to be better than the other guy, and he wasn't. I mean, even Pavel Francouz outplayed him, I thought.
Yeah, but I mean, that I think had more to do with Pavel Francouz playing quite well. I remember
yeah, it does.
No, but I'm saying that it's not like Mike Smith played bad. It's just like, you know, and it's not like he got himself outplayed.
Right.
He was simply outplayed. Like I remember when Montreal lost to the New York Rangers in 5 several years ago. It was the first year that Shea Weber was on the team.
Right.
And I remember, you know, the story was that Carey Price got outplayed by Henrik Lundqvist. Well, Carey Price is the best goalie in the world. Why is he getting outplayed by Henrik Lundqvist? There was like 7 goals scored the whole series in all 5 games between both teams.
Right.
It's like, okay, sure. So he let in one less goal or one more goal than Henrik Lundqvist over a 5-game series.
Yeah.
How could you possibly look at goaltending in a 5-game series with 7 goals?
Yeah.
Like 7 goals is like a Tuesday in this playoffs.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's just it's so.
And I will give the Oilers this, that they showed in these playoffs that hockey can be fun. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like the narrative.
Draisaitl wasn't having any fun.
No, well, I think he was enjoying it when they were winning, but it was tough sledding. But I just think, you know, the narrative has always been that, you know, playoffs is the time of the year when the game changes completely. You lock it down. Yeah. You know, you know, it's the games aren't as exciting. Like,
welcome to no more fun.
The Oilers gave us all kinds of great games, and part of it was because they just had to outscore their opponents.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And they went out and did it.
Yeah. So let's touch on the Colorado Avalanche before we have a sort of more engaged conversation about the Edmonton Oilers.
Yeah.
I want to drop a hot take here. Are you ready for it?
Yep.
I still don't have a whole ton of confidence in the Colorado Avalanche going into the Stanley Cup Finals.
Final. It's not the NBA.
Okay,
I
gotcha.
Okay.
Anyways, I don't have a whole ton of confidence in them going into the Stanley Cup Final. No, now, the caveat being that the team in the East might be a lot more banged up than them.
Might?
will be a lot more banged up than them. But I just think that the points that they put up this year, doing what they did this year, there is a small asterisk next to it to say the Western Conference was kind of weak. And I almost wonder if the fact that they kind of just blew through the Western Conference is that reminder that of what we all said at the beginning of the year.
Yep.
Everyone, whether it was a Twitter or writer or person on TV, was like, the Western Conference, barring the Colorado Avalanche, suck. And so the Colorado Avalanche have only had to play real meaningful games in the last few weeks. And even then, two sweeps in their path here.
Yeah, 2 sweeps, and they were one brain fart third period away from it being a 5-game series and not a 6-game series against St. Louis.
Right.
Like they're like, there are games where they probably could get away without hitting the showers. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and so they've breezed through this. But okay, so is that because I think you're selling them a bit short? No, they're clinical. They are clinical.
They're exceptionally good, but I really wonder what happens when they hit a team that's had to hit a level of intensity that they have not had to hit.
Right. Well, they lost game 1, right? Against St. Louis. That was game 1 they lost, right? So that's really, and then when they could have closed it out and they lost game 5 against St. Louis. Those are the only real kind of hiccups that they've had to deal with so far. They haven't had any major injuries other than Darcy Kemper. Yeah. And, Francouz has come in and been more than adequate.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'll give you a bit on that.
Yeah.
But I think that's canceled out by the fact that, I mean,
they're also really really good.
They're showing up to a knife fight with a bazooka. You know what I mean? Like in the final, like that. I think that counteracts that. Like I just, I think it's going to be Tampa on the other side, and I just wonder, after 2 long playoff runs, 1 in a bubble, how much they're going to have left.
Also, is Braden Point going to be back?
Yeah, is Braden Point going to be back? I mean, if this series goes 7, maybe he comes back.
Yeah.
So even if he does come back, he's not going to be 100%. Kucherov, I think, goes from game to game being brilliant and then looking like he's near death. You know what I mean? and so, but I just, I hear what you're saying and I get it, but I mean, it's possible that the Avalanche could just be that good too. You know what I mean? Like that they could just be an absolutely remarkably good team. I mean, you look at their personnel and you go, yeah, I could see that being a dominant team in any conference in any era. Of course. With the guys they have and the depth that they have.
Yeah.
And the guys they can move in and out of the lineup. I mean, Andrei Burakovsky can't even get in the lineup now, and he has to come in when someone's hurt.
Okay, but like the Florida Panthers won the President's Trophy.
Right.
And they won the President's Trophy in the same division as Tampa and Boston
and Toronto. Right.
And Montreal and Detroit. Sorry.
And Buffalo. And Ottawa.
Yeah. No, but I thought I'd just play a little devil's advocate on myself there.
Well,
but
yeah, exactly. Point is exactly. Half their games.
The Florida Panthers won forget their division though, even just the Eastern Conference. They won in the President's Trophy in an excellent conference where they had to fight with these teams all the time.
Every team had 100 points that made the playoffs in the Eastern Conference. All 8 teams had 100 points.
The Western Conference, I'm just like, Colorado got less points.
Fewer.
You're right.
Yep.
Colorado got fewer points playing against lesser competition.
Whoa, nice. Yes, they did.
I had to redeem myself somehow.
Yes, they did. They had 119 and what did, is that what they had? 119.
I know. I was just going to make it off like that was
Tampa
nothing.
had 110. Colorado had 119 and Florida had 120 something
or something.
Yeah, 24 maybe. Yeah. So you're right.
And Tampa swept the Florida Panthers.
Right.
It's kind of where this is all coming around to.
Okay. Yeah.
Anyways, look, I'm not. I think that
Colorado can only play the teams that they put in front of you.
No, of course you can. But I'm just saying, I think that Colorado does have to be the favorite in the Stanley Cup final. Yeah, but I'm just like, boy, you know what? Whatever. I'll shut up. I've been wrong like every single time that I've said this.
Could you imagine if the Rangers somehow pull this one out? Like they'll have been like the Colorado Avalanche will have played, with the exception of the Oilers, teams that were decidedly less than they are.
Right.
In all 4 series. But that's, you earned that right to do that.
Conversely, the Rangers have played better teams in every single series.
Not every single series. Not the first one.
With the Penguins?
Penguins, yeah.
I'd argue that the Penguins look like a better team than the Rangers.
Well, statistically, they weren't better. Okay. I mean, they had fewer points.
Yeah.
And Tampa's got exactly the same number of points as New York, but they have fewer regulation wins, so that's why they're the lower seed. Right. You know what's interesting is if Tampa makes the final and wins the Stanley Cup, I'd have to check this for sure, and don't quote me on this, but I think it would only be the 3rd time since the NHL went to 4 rounds of the playoffs that a team would win the Stanley Cup not having home ice advantage in any of the 4 rounds of the playoffs.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, I think the first time was the 95 Devils.
Yeah.
And the second time was the 2012 LA Kings. Huh. I think. I'm not 100% sure about that, but I'm sure people will check that. But I'm pretty sure that it would be only the 3rd time that's been accomplished.
That's quite the stat you come up with.
Fairly remarkable.
It is fairly remarkable, yeah.
But I mean, especially for a team that had 110 points. How did they not have home ice advantage in any series?
Right.
Like none.
Yeah.
They didn't have it against Toronto.
Yeah.
They didn't have it against they didn't have it against Florida, and they don't have it against the Rangers. And they won't have it against Colorado. If they win, they won't have it against Colorado either.
So let's talk a little bit about the Edmonton Oilers before we get off of the Western Conference Final.
Okay, you've got a really hot take here. We talked about it, and you better say it. Better say it, buddy.
That Jay Woodcroft looks like Seth MacFarlane?
No. That Jay Woodcroft, you compared him to somebody else.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
You compared him to somebody else. Yeah. And you're not getting away. You're not. No. Everybody, if he doesn't say it, I'm going to say it.
If I held you to everything you told me over the phone.
Yeah.
Oops. No, but you know what? I will say it because, I almost said Seth MacFarlane. Jay Woodcroft.
Seth Jarvis? No, wait a minute.
Getting all mixed up. Jay Woodcroft, yeah, he gives me a little bit of Dominic Ducharme vibes.
Whoa! Wow! Whoa, did you hear that?
Pow, right in the kisser.
Did you hear that?
He gives me a little bit of Dominic Ducharme vibes. I'll tell you why. He was very specific. He was very rigid about like kind of the way that he rolled out his lines and the way that like he just seemed to be very like I don't know how to explain it. It was overly confident and doing things that were working, but were only working because McDavid and Draisaitl were having the best playoff performances of all time.
Yeah, but he's still going to have those guys next year.
No, I know, but it just almost seemed okay. So last year, Dominic Ducharme was making some incredibly questionable decisions, both in the playoffs and in the regular season. And in the playoffs, he was having success. And so it was kind of like, well, you can question my decisions, but I'm having success. And it's like, well, show me a good good goalie. Yeah. Right? I'll show you a good coach, right?
Yeah.
And this year, I just feel like Jay Woodcroft putting like Ceci and Barry were a pairing for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Like the worst in zone pairing I could have come up with ever. You know what I mean? Having Leon Draisaitl on the penalty kill on one leg, find a place to cut his minutes somewhere. And let me tell you, the penalty kill, because, Draisaitl on half a leg on the penalty kill compared to Archibald on 2 legs is not the biggest.
Archibald was terrible in the playoffs.
He was
terrible.
He was bad, but we're talking about the penalty kill.
Yeah, we're talking about the penalty kill, which is a really, really, really important part of the game.
Right, but it's also a very specific skill set that Archibald does have.
Yeah.
Right? Look, I'm not telling you that Archibald's a better hockey player than Leon Draisaitl. I'm just telling you that if you've got a guy, essentially the amount of skate strides that are left in his leg are finite.
Yeah.
You're going to be using them on the penalty kill. So I think about what Montreal's playoffs last year and all of the questionable moves by Dom Ducharme, and then this year, none of them worked. And he was so rigid and like, well, we have a plan. We have this, we have that.
Yeah.
And the team was just floundering. And he's sitting there saying, there's always money in the banana stand, right? For the Arrested Development fans. But you know what I mean? Like, he's just sitting there just like cool as a cucumber. Like, there's always money in the banana stand. You're like, no, you've lost 10 in a row.
Yeah.
Get the money out of the banana stand.
Right,
you know what I mean?
right,
don't just, eat your ice cream sandwiches.
Yeah.
So my point is that in hindsight, we look back at the playoff run and be like, well, he wasn't just some evil genius. He had Carey Price and Shea Weber playing completely out of their minds.
Right.
And so I kind of look at Jay Woodcroft and go, yeah, man, he might be the beneficiary of the same sort of thing.
He might be, but I think it also reflects that he went in there and he realized, I got 2 of the best players in the world.
Yeah.
2 of the top 5 players in the world.
Yeah.
They take up
1 and 3 or so.
They take up 30% of our payroll.
Yeah.
I'm playing the shit out of them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to use these guys.
Yeah. I didn't buy my Lamborghini to park it in the driveway.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, but I think Edmonton is a really interesting situation because you look at Edmonton and you go, okay, they've got this run, and you could tell the way Connor McDavid talked after the year that he was pleased with what they accomplished.
Yeah.
But he's like, this still isn't good enough.
Yeah.
We only made it halfway through, right?
Yeah.
And, to get to the conference final in the NHL today, that's a pretty big accomplishment.
Yeah.
That's a notch that's a feather in your cap, if you will. But now it's like, okay, we know what this team is capable of doing. We know how good they are. We know how good they can be. We need to get a goalie. We need to figure out our goaltending situation.
I think that Mike Smith is just about to start rounding into form in the next couple of years.
Well, good for you. He's got 1 year left on his deal, and Koskinen, I think, is an unrestricted free agent. I can't imagine you come back with that tandem.
I know.
I just can't imagine you do. But anyways, so you got to figure out your goaltending. But like now you go, okay, we're close. We're close, right?
Yeah.
What could put us over the top? Could Bruce Cassidy put us over the top? Could Barry Trotz put us over the top? Could God put us over the like? Okay, so
it's like
that's
a dirty word.
See
you
that?
said.
Yeah.
I know the M word.
Yeah.
Mike Babcock.
But there's a lot. Could Pete DeBoer do it? I don't know. But there's a lot
Not
of
Pete DeBoer.
Super. No, but
the first 3 you said.
Yeah, but I mean, Barry Trotz, Bruce Cassidy, Pete DeBoer were 3/4 of the coaching staff for Canada's Olympic team if they had gone to the Olympics. Right? John Cooper was a head coach.
Yeah.
He's not going anywhere. The other 3 guys have been piped.
Yeah.
Right? So you've got some really interesting candidates out there.
Yeah.
So if you do subscribe to your theory that maybe it was just a team responding to a change and giving you that short term, it's not even short term. The body of work, I think, was bigger than you could just say a short term bump, right?
Right.
Then you go, okay, well, maybe we do need to bring one of these big names in there. And the thing with Edmonton is that, money's not an object.
Right.
Especially since there's no salary cap for coaches.
That's what drove me crazy.
You don't have to cheap out on a coach.
Yeah.
You can throw the bank vault at somebody.
That's what drove me crazy about the narrative midway through the year when to go back to the Dominic Ducharme thing, when it was like, well, they're not going to fire Dominic Ducharme because then they will have 3 head coaches on their payroll.
Who cares?
And Ducharme, Julian's still on the payroll, and then whoever else they hire. And I'm just kind of like, yeah, except that you wake up in the morning and guess who you are? The Montreal Canadiens.
Yeah.
You're the third most valuable franchise in the NHL. Spend the extra couple million bucks.
I am willing to bet everything I have, which really isn't much, but I'm willing to bet everything I have that did not even enter the minds of anyone making those decisions at any time. Oh, we got to pay 3 coaches. Oh, well, shucks.
Didn't even register as an amount.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. All right. So you want to move off the Edmonton Oilers?
Well, I just think they've got to figure out where they're going with their goaltending and their coaching. I think those are the two big ones.
I think as well that there are upgrades to be made on defense that won't necessarily cost more money. But the big thing, if I were Ken
Philip
Holland,
Broberg's, you would assume that he's ready to make the jump.
Yeah, Boucher takes another step forward.
Bouchard. Evan Bouchard. He was very good this season. I thought he was excellent this season. Yeah,
but he's still quite young.
Yep.
Yeah. But I think there's upgrades to be made on defense. But the big thing that I'd be looking for if I were Ken Holland.
Yep.
And I mean, he just retired now, but where is my Jason Spezza? Where is my grew up in Edmonton fan, has a couple good years. Where's my Mark Giordano?
Right.
I remember when Mathieu Perreault signed with the Montreal Canadiens in the offseason, and I remember Leafs Twitter going like, oh, why didn't we get, that guy on a league min or whatever the case was. And my friend tweeted out, did you read his last name?
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Right? Yeah. And so, teams like Toronto and Montreal do seem to manage to find Toronto more so lately with their success, but do seem to find, older players that still have some value that just want to, do something good. And so if you turn around and say, look, we made the conference final last year. We've got a chance to win. You grew up a fan of the team. This is a childhood dream, which means something whether you want it, whether you say it or not, right? Like it means something to these guys.
Right.
You've made enough money. Just come over here and you'll have a front office job at the end of it, much like Jason Spezza right now. So that's what I'd be saying. I'd be saying, where's my Jason Spezza? Where's my Mark Giordano?
Right. Okay.
That's what I'd be looking for if I were Ken Holland.
Okay.
Yeah. And dump Cece.
You really don't like him. I thought he was okay this year.
He was fine. He was fine. The thing about defense is that stats don't tell the whole story on defense.
Right.
Because if you look at like an expected goals or something like that, right? And not all gaffes are created equal.
Right.
So you make a gaffe and maybe statistically that can only be like a 0.101 expected goal or something like that, which is quite low. But you know what I mean? Like depending on exactly where and exactly how it was made, it might actually be a goal every single time. Right. Yeah. So he's just a guy that, I always, everybody that is like this, I always think about Joe Morrow, where you're like, you've got all the tools, you're good, but you just one too many times, you just make that big gaffe.
Right.
And it just prevents you from being all that you can be.
Well, and the one thing that we've completely forgotten about with the Edmonton Oilers that
has the injury to
no, it's what do you do with Evander Kane?
Speaking of huge gaffes,
what do you do with Evander Kane?
I mean,
everything in me, every fiber of my being wants to say, let him walk.
Let him walk. They can though.
I know. After that, after the way he played, but Evander Kane is the last guy you want to give a long-term big money contract to. Like, I just, because he's always one day away from
faking a COVID card or something.
Doing even on ice though.
Yeah.
They really could have used him in game 4.
Yeah.
And I just, everything.
One of the hottest shooters in the league
everything
right now.
Everything in me wants to say the Edmonton Oilers should just say, thanks so much, Evander, for the 4 months or whatever it was that you gave us. You were excellent. Thanks a lot.
Here's a letter of recommendation.
Yeah. And good luck to you on your future endeavors. Because that guy he was a model citizen and everything this year, but
was he?
He was, apparently. Except for that hit.
Right. Yeah. No. I understand that you obviously I know that you meant up to that point.
Yeah. In Edmonton. Edmonton. But yeah.
But yeah, I mean, there's just the thing is that we fall into this fallacy where it's just like, well, a team with a good leadership core can fix them.
He was part of the San Jose Sharks, which have the best. He was part
of the Winnipeg Jets,
and he was also part of the San Jose Sharks, which have the best culture of any team in the league.
Right.
There's leadership coming out the wazoo there. There is, they've got a San Jose way.
Yeah.
And you're indoctrinated
Evander,
into it
beards,
very early.
Man. We told you beards.
Yeah. But the thing with Evander Kane is that sometimes guys get it. You know what I mean? Guys get it, but I'm just not sure Evander Kane's at the age and the stage of his career where he's ever going to actually get it, and fall into line. And you don't want some guy who's going to be a robot, but you need a guy who's
where
it's not about him, where it's not about him.
One of my favorite goaltenders is Robin Lehner.
Yeah.
And I remember when Robin Lehner was with the Buffalo Sabres. And I remember him screaming at the coach and just thinking, like, what an entitled, unearned sack of garbage.
Yeah.
That is going to, go and publicly be screaming at his coach after getting pulled, where you played badly. And then, he comes out and he's open about his substance abuse issues.
And mental health struggles.
And his mental health struggles. And the two are they're two different things. Like they're not two different things. Like mental, like substance abuse is a mental health issue,
right?
But he also has talked about having bipolar, which is its own thing.
Yeah,
and that's serious, right? Like
it is.
There are different
and trauma, and
there are different levels of severity.
He
comes out and he talks about it. But the thing is that he doesn't just so now in his career, he's not a robot, right? He's far from it, but he is. He's a likable guy.
Yeah.
And even when he says something that I don't agree with, he explains himself and it's kind of like, you know what? I don't agree with your opinion, but I respect your thought process to get to that opinion.
Yeah.
And so it's just, that, and so we love a good redemption arc, but we're all waiting for it with Evander Kane. We want to like him because he's such a good hockey player.
Yeah, and he's had the opportunities too.
Of course he's had the opportunities.
I've actually interviewed Evander Kane one-on-one.
Really?
A couple of times. He's quite a likable young man when you talk to him.
Yeah.
Like he's not a dick.
Right.
Like when you talk to him.
Yeah.
I don't know what the disconnect is and why it keeps happening.
Right.
But it, as you said, it's happened in two organizations that have had very, very strong leadership.
I mean, we should have known with Dustin Byfuglien. Like, this guy was like one of the most quintessential hockey players, of all time.
Well, to me, it was the San Jose thing. If you can't fall in line and do the right thing playing for the San Jose Sharks, then
what do you do?
Then you look inward, right?
Yeah.
It's like, okay, this keeps happening to me, and maybe I'm part of the problem here. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I just, everything in me wants to say, do the brave thing, Edmonton. The brave thing for the Edmonton Oilers and Ken Holland would be to say, thank you, Evander. Goodbye. That would be the ballsy thing for them to do.
Yeah.
I don't know after that if they can do it.
I don't think they can afford
and
to.
Then they've got Leon Draisaitl coming out and endorsing him afterwards and all that other stuff.
Yeah.
I would be worried about signing that guy to anything more than a 2-year deal.
Okay, so here's the bottom line. Like let's bottom line this with Evander Kane. Is how far do they go in the playoffs this year without Evander Kane?
How far did they even make the playoffs without Evander Kane? He was excellent.
He was excellent down the stretch.
Yeah.
Okay, but let's hypothesize that they've made the playoffs without Evander Kane. How far do they go?
I'm not sure if they get to the conference final without him.
Oh, I almost guarantee that
13 goals in 15 games.
Yeah.
Is that what he had? What do you have? 13 and 15?
Close to that.
Yeah.
I don't know that. I guarantee that they don't make the conference final. I'm wondering if they get out of round one.
Maybe they don't. Yeah.
Right.
Yep. I mean, because, and also because he's, LA had a certain way of playing the game, and he was pretty good at playing that kind of game.
He was, he was the poison to that.
Yeah.
So I'm not convinced that they get out of round one without Evander Kane, at which point, if you're Ken Holland, as much as I hate to say it, because it's just like, you can't keep getting away with this. Right. But, how do you, if you're turning around and you're saying, okay, we want to build off the success, Evander, it's like McDavid, Draisaitl, Kane, Hyman, everyone else.
Yeah.
Smith would be there.
Might be Hyman Kane on a level ground. The only thing is like, it's not about like, I mean, the Oilers are cap strapped. They're not cash strapped. They're cap strapped.
Yeah.
Right. But it's not so much about money.
Yeah.
Because you bring a guy in like that, you move guys out. Right. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, they can do it. It's not about money. It's not about on ice, obviously. It's about what does this say to your group about the culture?
Right.
And how does it end up affecting what you're trying to do? I remember the last year that I coached my son's team. We had a good team. We had a really good team. Mm-hmm. Not a great team, but a really good team. But we had 3 kids on that team that just destroyed everything, right? like they just sucked all the positivity and the momentum and all the good things we were doing right out of the room.
Yeah.
And out of our team. Yeah. And we crashed and burned because of it.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's outlandish to suggest that 1 or 2 guys that are on their own agenda and aren't on the program can really completely derail a team.
I completely agree with you. When I was paddling competitively, there was this myself in our age group, myself and one other guy were the 2 best paddlers in our club in the age group.
Right.
We were in a 4-person canoe. We get up to the start line, and like this guy would just like he would try to antagonize me constantly.
Yeah.
And anyway, so like just like we're putting up our paddles, like ready to start the race, and he goes, "Hey, Waugh, try not to screw up today." I was pissed off. I basically just didn't paddle the race.
Right.
And because of that, we could never be in a C2, a 2-person canoe together.
Right.
Because we just, oil and fire.
Why didn't you cross-check him with your paddle in the back?
Oh, I almost punched him in the mouth more than a few times. I think I threw him to the ground once or twice.
Wow.
Like I think
Did this guy end up ever becoming a paddler?
No, of course not.
Oh, of course not. Okay.
Yeah. And injury is what put me out of the running there. But
right.
The bottom line is that our club could never do well in C2 because the fact is that we would have been the perfect C2 partners together.
Yeah.
If
not for the fact that you couldn't stand the guy.
If not for the fact that we couldn't stand each other, right?
Right.
And so I
find it hard to believe that you would be an unlikable human being.
Wow. I was like looking for the joke or the veiled barb in that, but that's a very nice thing for you to say.
No, I find that very difficult to believe because you're very accommodating. I show up late all the time and you're never mad at me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a dartboard with your face on it every time you show up.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that. I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
So anyways, my point is that like you're absolutely right. the egos and the whatever, it can just completely derail a team and just make it a completely toxic environment. And so you're just never going to get out of it what you want to get out of it.
So they've already, the Oilers have already like, they've taken the leap, right? Like they signed him when he was toxic and it was a PR sort of hit nightmare on them and everything. So they've done that.
Yeah.
You know, they've got beyond that.
Yeah. You've already jumped into the disgusting, murky swamp water. You might as well wade to the other side.
It's a really difficult call. It's a really, because I mean, after what he did, is he going to play on a 2-year deal for a couple of $1 million? Probably not.
I mean, okay. So if I were the Edmonton Oilers, I'd say, hey, Evander, we want you back. Go test out free agency. Tell us what the best number is. We'll tell you what we can do then.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. The only thing is then once you don't lock them down before free agency, but it's
kind of one of those, if you lose them, you lose them.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.